Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Our social media, considered the new media, has come to stay, playing a vital role in communication. Now, since the introduction of the internet connection, which makes it possible to interact with people from across the world, also making the world a global village, the social media has been used for news and information dissemination. Although a meaningful tool in the society, its negative use can have severe implications for unity and peaceful coexistence. A social fragmentation, erosion of trust, increased tension and conflict, undermining of democratic institutions, and a threat to national security. Tonight, NTA Tuesday Live will focus on the prospects, constraints of the new media, and of course, the impact of its negative use. But before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this report by ICT Correspondent Ayodeji Makinde.
Internet and social media have become integral parts of modern culture, captivating people of all ages. With advancements in information and communications technology, access to these platforms has become remarkably easy. However, this digital transformation is a double-edged sword. While social media has revolutionized nearly every aspect of life, the potential of its misuse has raised serious concerns. Issues such as cyberbullying, the spread of fake news, hate speech, and unrealistic expectations are growing problems that have prompted experts to advocate for stricter regulations and the enforcement of social media laws.
Cyberstalking and cyberbullying is a very, very major pandemic right now, especially in the 21st century. You know, the inception of internet and wireless has brought up so many issues like that. So I feel like everyone just needs to be cyber alert. There are ways that, you can keep yourself safe, because if you don't safeguard yourself, you will fall in the wrong hands.
According to Data Reportal, there were 5.17 billion social media users worldwide as of July 2024, with 282 million new users joining in the last 16 months, equivalent to nearly 9 new users every second. In Nigeria, social media use is rapidly expanding. As of January 2024, the country had 36.75 million Facebook users, 28.5 million YouTube users, 12.4 million Instagram users, 23.84 million TikTok users, and 15.1 million Snapchat users. On these platforms, a diverse mix of Generation X, Millennials, Generation Z, and the emerging Generation Alpha engage in dynamic interactions, often blurring the lines between professionalism and amateurism in posts, comments, and other forms of content.
For people into the business sector, they use various social media platforms for advertisements, promotions, and the rest. It has aided the comfortability of being able to work from home as well. A lot of people are now self-employed due to social media businesses, and that helps the economy of Nigeria.
It's all happened as a mistake. I actually said something by mistake that I did not mean, but all of a sudden within 20 minutes I saw myself all over the place. People all over my comment section saying a lot of things about me, hate speech here and there and all. So, how did I go through it? I went to isolation and, I started up again, because they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But you keep on trying your best to make yourself stronger.
Social media platforms should not be regulated because it serves as a medium for people to share information. Rather, it should be minimized by enlightening and educating the people to be responsible users of these social media platforms.
As more people continue to occupy the digital space, experts argue that regulations and enforcement alone are not enough to address the challenges posed by the misuse of social media. They recommend that professionals from various fields actively engage on these platforms to set the record straight. By doing so, they can help combat the spread of misinformation, reduce the prevalence of hate speech, and promotes the responsible use of social media for a more informed and ethical digital society. In Abuja, Ayodeji Makinde.
That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guests. I'd like to welcome to this program Utega Ogra, is Senior Special Assistant to the President, Digital New Media. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Right. We're also joined tonight by Abdul Hakim Ajijola, his chairman, African Union Cybersecurity Expert Group. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Let me also welcome to tonight's program Dr. Uche Mbanaso. He's Associate Professor, Cybersecurity and Computing, Nasarawa State University. He's also the co-founder, Institute of Emerging Technologies. Thanks for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure.
All right. And also joining us via Zoom is Mustafa Ahmed. He's a communications and strategy expert. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, as you know already, this program goes interactive at some point. But when it's that time, we'll remind you of the process and the procedure. But for now, let's begin to look at the issues involved. And once again, let me welcome all our guests. Gentlemen, it's good to have you join us. And perhaps we might just start on this note and say, well, I don't know if you gentlemen love football. And as they say, many Nigerians, we're a football-crazy country. And so we're always up, especially when the national team is playing its matches. And it's said that there's hardly any time that Nigerians are more united than when the national team, the Super Eagles, are playing. And of course, quite in the last couple of days, we have come to be aware of so many things about Nigeria's Super Eagles. The challenges they had flying to Libya, and how in the long run they had to come back to Nigeria. And well, that second leg with Libya has been put up by CAF, and investigations are on into the circumstances that led to the treatment the Nigerian team got. Now, I'm going in this direction because arising from this, we see the very powerful nature of the social media, because as soon as this thing began unfolding, virtually everyone was aware, because it was almost real time. The social media blew it around, and of course Nigerians were unanimous about it. Now that's an example of the usefulness, the very good tool that the social media is. And so we can all celebrate that and say, see, in times past, it might have taken maybe a day or two before we'd get to find out what happened. But here is one of the good sides of the social media. However, how do we assess generally in Nigeria? Let's begin with the Senior Special Assistant.
Thank you very much. So for me, I think the most important thing to understand about social media is amplification. Everything gets amplified, be it the positives or the negatives. And when you look at today's media ecosystem, you know, it's no longer a 24-hour cycle. Once upon a time, you had to wait for NTA or your regular radio newspapers to come out every day, you know, NTA every 9 p.m., 7 p.m., and things like that. Now the news cycle is every minute, every second, every hour. So what that brings with it, and coupled with the fact that it's also amplified beyond, I mean, whatever normal circles that you normally have kept your news within, it comes with it a lot of issues. So I'll give two examples, and I'll use the Nigerian example that the Nigerian Super Eagles example that you just brought on now, and I'll also give another example, which happened a couple of years ago. The Nigerian Super Eagles, they were having that issue, and whilst that was going on, someone came online, the captain of the Libyan national team, and put out a statement saying they had been treated the same way when they came to Nigeria for their match. And all of a sudden, you had a section of Nigerians who started to talk negatively about the country, regardless of the fact that their fellow citizens were in a dire situation in a foreign country, without food, without shelter, without any protection of any sort, in a sort of semi-kidnap situation, and that also blew up. Before 12 noon yesterday, which is when it happened, we started to see a lot of Nigerians moving to have those negative sentiments about our country. That is the power of social media. The negatives get amplified. The positives, just like the players that put it up out there, also got amplified. Now, let me take you back a couple of years ago. We had an unfortunate attack on a train in Nigeria. And you had people who were calling out for help from that train because of the negative sentiments and the ethno-religious issues that were happening in the country around that time. You also had a lot of flare-ups online. What did we have? You had people laughing and, calling out the person who was calling for help on that train. And everyone, or most people, ignored the cries for help until it was very clear that something had happened. That was, a national disaster for Nigeria. So social media, excellent tool. It's used by a lot of young people. It's opened up new businesses, opened up new vistas of opportunities for people out there. It's helped those of us in government communicate better with people. It's helped people, give feedback to their governments. But at the same time, there's a reason why countries that we say are more developed, even though that's arguable, have put in some sort of measures to contain free speech. There's this saying that, there's freedom of speech, but there are limitations to every freedoms that are guaranteed by, in the Constitution. And that's why we have laws. So I don't think we should be having a conversation as to, should we curtail the use of social media? No. But we should be able to guide and limit people within certain, boundaries as to the best use of social media.
All right.
And I think that's it.
We'll expand on that discussion. Let me come to Abdulhakeem Ajibola. Again, on a very general note, what's your assessment of social media use in Nigeria?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I would, however, crave your indulgence. I noticed that, as you said, we're all gentlemen, and I think social media is also quite extensively used by the fairer sex. So maybe we need to have a roundtable that's a little more representative, and I think that's something we need to work towards. Now, building on what Mr. Ortega said, and also what we just saw from your Vox Populi, clearly social media allows greater empowerment, innovation, and yes, communication. But yes, it also does facilitate some of the negatives, especially misinformation. Sometimes the misinformation or people can be very shrill. But having said that, the question then is, so, what are we going to do about it? And I think there is a need as a society to engage in some conversations around, first of all, promoting digital literacy. Also, I think we need to do a better job of fostering civic responsibility. Because when you see people online that spew hate or, misaligned speech, it's about them. There's clearly something wrong with them. And so we need to find ways and mechanisms to ensure that people engage online. And while I think it is clear that we do need to have rules, indeed, even the Almighty sent down the 10 Commandments. So, it's human nature. But, there's a quote allegedly said by Idi Amin, I can guarantee you free speech. I can't guarantee you freedom after the speech. And so we have to find a way of putting in those boundaries. But again, I think it's not so much the platform, it's actually about the people. And so some of these new generations that we're talking about is the educational system doing them justice by giving them the capacity for critical thinking. Is it giving them the capacity to understand that what they say has implications? I think this is something as a society, we need those conversations. We need to improve upon. Thank you.
We'll also look at that in greater detail. But let's hear the opening comments of Dr. Mbanaso.
Thank you very much for having me. For me, I will probably take it from the academic perspective and drive into some philosophy of the social media. The fact remains that social media has introduced some symmetric and asymmetric characteristics. And that symmetry and the asymmetric characteristics is actually what is amplifying most of the things that happens in the social media. And that can lead me to talking about probably the reconstruction of the use of the word negative impact. And negative impact and positive impact are very subjective, because the one who is dishing out what you feel that is negative, to him is positive, and vice versa. So I would like to refer it to irresponsible use of social media and the harmful use of social media, because that's where you can delineate the impact. Is it actually irresponsible? Is actually harmful? This is what actually impacts the use of social media. So in as much as social media has introduced a lot of tools that are supposed to be harnessed, to improve efficiency and productivity. And especially with Nigeria, over 69% are youths, social media can be a tool, for revenue generation, as opposed to using it negatively or, irresponsibly. Let me come back to that. And so you see the impact is much on our youths. If you look at what is happening within the Yahoo framework, you see that the social media has played a very serious impact, on amplifying the activities of these Yahoo boys. And these Yahoo boys we can re-engineer them or redirect them to be able to use social media for positive or for gainful productivity, rather than using it to harm the society. And so for me, I think what is very, very important is how we start reorienting our people, because our culture and ideology is tampered by the social media. We are losing values. We're losing both family values, we're losing both cultural values. And so we need to start reorienting our people. And if you take a look at what is happening in social media, for instance, most of the Western world, the Asians and they use social media for productivity, as opposed to using it for, just more of social interactions. If you go to TikTok, if you see a Chinese using TikTok, using it to promote a product or, activities that can generate revenue. But if you see how our people are using TikTok, for instance, it's all about fantasy, glamour, So we need to begin to reorient our people, to direct them in a situation that they can use this in for productivity, to be able to, better our society than, making it to be very, very harmful.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, at this point, let's hear from the communications and strategy expert, Mustafa Ahmed, who is joining us via Zoom. Well, you've heard the comments of other guests here in the studio. What are your thoughts? Yes, Mustafa, can you hear me?
I have listened to a lot of things that have been said by the studio guests, and I completely agree with a large majority of what they've said. But I think what means. Can you hear me, sir? Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Even though the picture seems to have frozen, but we can hear you. Just go ahead.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. If you can hear me. Okay. So, okay. Okay, that's good. I completely agree with all the things that have been said by the guests in the studio, and I think they've done a brilliant analysis of the topic. But then again, I think that social media isn't really the problem. I think there is a moral decadence that not looking at. We're not looking at a deprivation of our moral.
All right. Some challenges with the links there. It seems to have frozen. Yeah, just go ahead. Go on.
Okay, so I can hear you. I can hear you. If you can hear me.
Sure. I'm sure you can pick up from where you left off.
There is a moral decadence in our society that we're not seeing, and this is the root cause of social media. Like the last speaker said, there are countries in the world who use social media for a lot of positive things. Then you ask yourself, why is the case in Nigeria so very different? Why are we so big on amplifying the negatives? And it's simply because, as a people, we're losing our moral fiber on a daily basis. We're not focusing on or minoring on the major and majoring on the minors. Like you said, Nigeria has a youthful population. 69% of our population are young people, and these people have energy and they've got this drive to do things. But we must find a way very, very quickly to redirect that energy positively. It's not just about social media, it's about the fact that we have a bustling population that is untamed, for lack of better words. And here's what I'm going to with my point. So we are at a junction. Social media has come to stay. It's not going to go anywhere. It's revolutionizing the way that we communicate on a daily basis. Like Otega said, things happen nowadays in the minute, in the second. And if we drop the ball on this, we're going to be in a lot of trouble as a nation. So we must very quickly begin to find a way to reorientate young Nigerians who are the most active set of people on social media, and find a way to get them to focus more on the positives of social media. There are tons of opportunities. YouTube, for instance, is a university on its own, same as Instagram, same as TikTok. There are people who are learning digital skills, construction skills, whatever kind of skill you want to learn on social media. But you find that with the Nigerian population, a large majority of Nigerian populations are on social media just for the sake of entertainment. And when this is the drive, the bad news sells is what it is. So there is that tendency for them to tilt towards using social media for the very wrong reasons. I very often liken social media to the creation of dynamite. When dynamites were created, it was intended for good, but we all know how that went. And this is where social media is right now. So if we do not begin to very quickly begin to focus heavily and intentionally on the positive of social media, we're going to find ourselves down the drain as a nation very, very quickly. You look at nations like China, Canada, America, and perhaps maybe the UK, France, Dubai, for instance. These are nations that have hacked how to use social media to drive positive social change. And Nigeria must begin to take examples and learn lessons from these countries in a way to drive ourselves forward.
All right, thank you so very much. Back here in the studio, let's me get back to the SSA on digital and new media. In your opening comments, you referred to both sides, the good aspects, the other aspect, especially when a negative narrative was put out about the country, and you drew attention to the fact that many Nigerians latched onto that and were willing to believe the worst of their country, even though their fellow citizens were in a dire situation in a foreign land. The social media, as it is, does have a way of correcting these distortions, doesn't it? So the question would be, how well has the state employed the use of this important tool?
So the state is doing its best, and I would say it's best in the sense that it's an open source platform. Everyone can come in, everyone can go out. Meaning that, which makes it difficult, extremely difficult, by the platforms, by government agencies, by regulators, wherever they exist anywhere in the world, to actually regulate. So behind every AI model or AI tool that you use to try to regulate these platforms, you also have human beings putting a second level check on it. And it is extremely difficult. But that being said, at the end of the day, something that we all agree on this table, and from the speaker, that called in via Zoom, is that there is a question about our moral fabric as a country. Something has gone wrong somewhere. How do we begin to fix that? How do we begin to, go back to those values that made us Nigerians? Who are we as Nigerians? To what do we owe our loyalty as Nigerians? Do we still remember, the sense of community, the sense of belonging that made us all Nigerians? That's something that you go to any African culture, you go to any African home, it's about the sense of community. We're becoming individualistic as a people, and that's one of the side or after effects of, unchecked social media or any media platform. It happened with the TVs. So when TVs came out, you saw a lot of young people, glued to their TV screens, and they had less time to spend within communities, which is who we are as Africans. You can't take that away from our DNA. The moment you start to hit at the home, which is the center of the community, then every other thing around that starts to break out. Then you have the larger community outside the home. If you did wrong at home and your parents could not caution you, you had your uncles and your aunts as a second level check to put you in the right place. So regulating things like this, regulation as a whole, is a collective responsibility. It's not a government to the citizen thing. It's not a citizen to citizen thing. It's an every Nigerian or every citizen of the world to every citizen of the world thing. And that's why I like what platforms like Twitter have done recently. They've introduced something called community notes, where if something comes out that is wrong, as many people that can put up a note saying, this is false news, and refer you to the actual correct news, then it flags such a message. So we need to start to design, and that's why I know the NBC has recently come up with an act. They're trying to repeal and reenact the NBC Acts, and there are provisions there, to fix this. Over 1,200 infractions from media houses who are supposed to know better, who are supposed to do better research, who are supposed to do better, who actually talk to the general public. 1,243 or so infractions in the last 1 year from organized media. That is nothing to write home about. So if that can happen within such organized structures like this on social media, talk less of, the regular young person out there. We're all open. The world it's a global, marketplace now.
All right, there are aspects which we'll interrogate further, but I will just note that and come to read again. Now it's talking about the responsibility of not just the citizens, but the state as well in churning out credible information, because sometimes the issues start from that basis. If you have a state organ that puts out information that is considered not credible, then of course you get an application, as you've said, the social media would do. But let's come to the other aspects of it, and the security of the cyberspace here. We went into this as usual. We're part of a global community. Did we have the adequate checks for the misuse or the irresponsible use, as Dr. Mbanaso has termed it, of the social media in terms of securing, the space?
The quick answer is no. But that's also, you have to understand that nobody did. It's something new. It's a new way of doing things. So it's not a fault. It's something you discover with obviously 2020 hindsight.
Did we catch on quick enough?
I don't think anybody can catch on quick enough because first of all, there's a famous saying by Barry Green in Singapore Cyber criminals operate at the speed of light, and law enforcement operates at the speed of law. So it means there's a natural mismatch. But like I said, the quick issue is that we have to be not just proactive, but actually we have to rethink. We have to be transformational in our thinking. I think it is said that the light bulb is not the product of incremental improvement of the candle. So at some point you have to make a leap. But when we talk about the philosophy, and I'm happy Mr. Ortega brought that up. For example, across Africa we have Ubuntu. I am because we are. And these are the kind of things we need to embed, in ourselves and in our children and the people around us. But though one of the speakers mentioned, you look at USA, for example. I think USA, Canada, Great Britain, Europe, their quagmire is arguably worse than ours. I would agree that maybe places like South Korea and China, because they are inherently more disciplined, are doing better. So again, it's not necessarily the platform, it's actually a reflection of the people, the society. Also, I think it's very crucial that we point out that, because Dr. Banaso brought the issue of academia, and I agree with him 110%. We don't study things. Your colleague, mentioned some very interesting statistics, but have we actually studied how these messages diffuse? Are there academics in Nigeria that have produced the kind of papers that would be of use, for example, to the legislature, to the executive, in order to make decisions that are empirically based, not simply based on I think or I believe, And then finally, I'd like to touch on the issue of censorship, because you brought it up, you alluded to it. Traditionally, censorship was by government. Some government entity could control what was said. And as Mr. Ortega said, now there are multiple pathways. You don't have that kind of control. And what we have seen is that censorship is moving from government, or has moved rather from government to private platforms. Your Twitters, your Facebooks, your TikToks, they are now doing the censoring. However, where the problem down the road is we're already seeing censorship by algorithm, by AI, where none of us know how the decision to block or facilitate
runaway technology.
This is the challenge. It's not us alone. There's no country that's not grappling with these kind of issues. And I think the big picture really is that at the end of the day, as a society, one, we have to have our own internal conversations to decide what we want, where we want to go, what kind of philosophy we want to adapt, what kind of studies we can do. But at the same time, we need to be able to combine it with the greater knowledge of the wider world, because nobody can solve these challenges alone. Nobody.
Right, in addition to the discussion in the studio, we have a number of reports. Let's get to see this one from Lagos.
Recently, a story which aired years ago resurfaced on social media as a current report. It got millions of views, which caused panic among citizens. But in a swift reaction, the authority concerned cleared the air. One can only imagine the impact of such misinformation. Statistics from reputable sources like Statista, Global Social Media Examiner, Global Web Index, among others, show that about 4.62 billion people use the social media daily.
I use social media most of the time. Academically, without social media, I won't get information about things that are happening in school or about classes. Without social media, no information for you.
I basically do make content, so yeah, regularly.
I actually use the social media frequently.
With traffic on various social media platforms every second, experts say misuse can have grave consequences on unity and peaceful coexistence in Nigeria, as the country draws its strength from ethnic, and religious diversity. Lagos is a melting pot of cultures, ethnicities, as well as religions, and misuse of social media can threaten harmony in the state.
When I look at the negative implications of social media, I see it as similar to the negative implications of any means of communication or interactions. You know, Lagos is a highly populated area. So when there's that fake news, it spreads very quickly through social media, and it could lead to exacerbation of religious and ethnic tension.
I think one of the best ways to counter false information is by having the right information, having someone to be able to debunk the information and say, okay, this was wrong and this was right. Having to be able to prove that to a wide audience helps to pass the message across more.
Since social media is not all doom and gloom, authorities concerned are advocating usage to promote unity and peaceful coexistence. In Lagos, Hinginu, John Adams.
Next report comes from Kaduna.
July 2024, research shows that the number of social media users is over 5.17 billion worldwide, which is about 63% of the world's population. Nigeria accounts for 36.17%. In the social media space, 16% of its total population are active on the social media. The new media remains critical as a means of disseminating information with ease to a wider audience.
I want to be sharing something that will hurt somebody. Like, you know that if this person saw this, definitely he'll be hurt. And you want to be the cause. That's totally bad. Just do something that will be important and that will give people peace of mind.
Being a Nigerian, we should not post anything that will create a negative impact outside the country. Because what people are watching in other countries has their own challenges, not only Nigerians.
Like some bloggers too, they give out incorrect information, especially maybe about government of Nigeria or about other things. There's a lot of things that is on social media that is not even correct, but people believe what they see on social media based on its social media, and a lot of people believe what they see on social media. Even the lifestyle on social media, a lot of people believe it, and it leads a lot of people astray.
Key players are of the view that the negative usage of the social media is capable of undermining national sovereignty.
For national economic development, for national security, for family and friends, interconnectivity and good relationship. It can also be used in cementing and creating love, peace, unity and harmony.
It will also help people to know themselves and who they are, and that is part of socialization. Even the economy, it helps in building the economy, in spreading new techniques, innovation, creativity and such other things that social media also help to promote.
There are things that they can do by sharing rich content where people can benefit from that particular content, and also they are going to gain incentive from that particular thing which they have shared, because most of these social media websites do give their authors incentive for information that they share.
Nigeria is blessed with beautiful content that can be showcased on the social media for the global community to behold, attract global investors, and promote national cohesion. In Kaduna, Achari Maxwell.
Well, back in the studio, and let's come to the academic here. And we just heard a comment about algorithms in the space now at this time, and I'm thinking, you impart knowledge, the teaching and learning that takes place in academic institutions. Now you have all these tools that are supposed to enhance these. But from some quarters, it's looking as if there is, one, a lot of laziness in institutions. Learning has been consigned to just pressing a few buttons and regurgitating what's online, making the job of shaping these minds more difficult. And in any case, as an academic, At what point do you begin to find out that this is something that's been churned out from AI and not something that a student who has learned something from what you've taught them is right now?
Okay, thank you. Before I will delve into that, I think it is important to emphasize that our educational system is just like almost everything in Nigeria. There's serious decay and irresponsible approaches to, learning. So, like you said, a lot of people are very lazy. And I just find it the right word so that it won't look like I'm just utterly criticizing, But the issue, the truth about it, is that Africa is missing an opportunity. And that opportunity they're missing is lack of serious commitment. And when you look at it, you can only give what you have. So if a resource person is not digitally savvy, he cannot be able to know when there are tricks in the digital ecosystem. So that particular gap is very, very serious. And you see, you have a lot of people in academia that are analog, that even in people that are in computing department can hardly use computer. So how do you take that? So we are missing an opportunity. And the reason of this is that we are not prioritizing our investment. For instance, since the advent of the internet, the advent of cyberspace, has really Nigeria taken R&D serious? They have not. As we speak, there is no single center of excellence in anything in cyberspace or internet. If you go to a place like UK, they have nothing less than about 60 centers of excellence, dedicated for this area, because we cannot revise digital phenomena. It has come to stay with us. And so when you are not doing any research, there is no way you gain an empirical knowledge. You are just either re-echoing what somebody has said or doing a copycat. In fact, before I continue, me and my colleagues are working in a book which we call From Digital Divide to Quantum Divide. And that is what the kind of dilemma Africa is going to face in the next 10 years. You are talking about AI. Are we doing any substantive research in AI? I know that AI is introducing a lot of bias, because if the data is trained with data from the West, it will react to things from the West. It will, it will defranchise us. So there is the government, sorry to say, are not prioritizing where they're supposed to prioritize. It is government's prerogative to deliberately, establish centers of excellence, because digital has come to stay with us. That is the way forward.
Let me quickly ask Otega to respond to that.
I actually wanted to respond to that, and I'm happy you've given me the opportunity to. So it is a known fact world over that governments are slower to the game in terms of computing AI and technology than the private sector. The best the governments can do is provide an enabling environment.
Absolutely.
For this thing. Yes, I agree with you that we need to create centers of excellence.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need to see private sector players step up to the board and show the government the way. It's you say.
I think I totally disagree with you. There is no country. There is no country anywhere private sector set up center of excellence. It is the government.
I am very aware that there is a young Nigerian man and lady who are currently doing the first machine learning for AI based on black arts, culture, dance, music, and characters. That is the first of its kind anywhere in the world. And this project has been going on for about 3 years. And they are already coming to fruition, meaning that in a few months, you will be able to go on most AI platforms that signed up to their, machine learning platforms and be able to, replicate African dances, African art, and these are done by young people. I do agree, and I think it's because the conversation has been mostly negative from the start. Let's not forget that, you see, these platforms have also led to one of the biggest, income revenue generating platforms for us as a country. You have the 70% young people, many who are unemployed or semi-employed or, have little to do. And this is the only means for them to make any sort of life.
Absolutely.
So what do we need to do? We need to go back to the drawing boards. We have failed as elders in the communities. We have failed as parents because social media, like I said at the beginning, is about amplification. It only amplifies what is already there. If we're a nation that gossips, social media helps you amplify that. If we're a nation that backbites, social media helps you amplify that. If we're a nation that cheats, that is what social media amplifies for you. Yeah. So we need to go back and review our values as a nation. And Absolutely. That is why I like what the NOA is doing with the new National Values Charter. But I believe that they need to do more. I'm speaking as a young person, but also as someone from government. We need to do more as a government. Yeah. But people also need to remember, this is the only country we've got. This is the only Africa we've got.
Yes.
The West is not going to come and help us
Absolutely.
Put things in order. If you see the government not doing what they ought to do, call us to order. Bring the blueprint to us, and we'll provide the enabling
just give me a second. Just give me a second. You see, so that is why I am saying it's the responsibility of the government to deliberately and harmonize establishment of centers of excellence in so many institutions, carrying out research, innovation, and development in several areas. That is only way, because what we are doing, we're just mainly consuming. We're consuming almost everything digital. And it is very, very dangerous for our country when we only depend on the West for everything we consume digitally. And that is creating a divide, a serious divide, from digital divide to quantum divide.
Okay, let's try to re-establish links with Mustafa Ahmed, and I'm hoping this time the connection will be clean. You've heard the conversation here, but I want to go a little bit different, to go to the issue of content creation and this providing a platform to millions of young people to earn incomes. And of course, well, I'll look at both sides of it, but let me start with the other side of it. Yeah, you're creating content. But a lot of times, it is skewed towards the number of hits and just how much money you can make rather than something that is responsible. How do you explain that?
Okay, so well, I'll give an example. When we started this program, we talked about what happened with the Nigerian team in faraway Libya. As that was going on, there was an incident on social media where somebody or some group of people had cropped a video of the Senate president. I think it was a 57 seconds video, had been cropped into an 8-second video to misrepresent what that man had said in the entirety of that video. And that singular 8 seconds video had millions of hits. This in itself is content creation. Somebody sat down somewhere and manipulated the content to suit a particular audience. We have a pensive youth population who are inherently angry about the situations of the country, whether justified or not. That's not the conversation. But people who curriculum know this, and then they will tap into what that demographic wants to hear. It's like when you're fishing, you might like rice, you might like beans, but you're not going to catch a fish by baiting it with that. You're going to give the fish what the fish wants. So it brings it back to the situation. So somebody's creating content now, and they're trying to earn a living. They will do anything necessary. Whatever it is that the audience will consume is what they will give them. And that's why I completely agree with what Ortega has said, that we need to begin to re-engineer the paradigm of our youth. We need to find a way. It's difficult. It's something that we should have been doing years before now. But like they say, the best time to start is today. We need to find a way to shape the paradigm of the average young Nigerian and make them just a little bit more patriotic towards this country, and maybe would have a way of pulling ourselves out of this. Otherwise, this becomes a huge money spinner that leaves absolutely no room for consequences for anybody. So people create content which write about anything, and I dare say, write about anything, kidnapping, rape, whatever it is that is trending becomes a means of content creation for the average Nigerian, and this is it's unchecked power that they have. I don't think that there is any legislation, so to say, or any law that puts a breach of what content creation should be in this country. I might be wrong, but from my research, I've not found anywhere where there are limitations to what you can put together and call content creation. So long as this generates revenue, and I think that's exactly where the problem started with us as Nigerians. The moment social media platforms began to pay people for views and impressions, and a lot of these people began to tap into this idea that they could write about anything that rouse up the youth demographic of the country and earns them money, and then they will do it again and again and again, and there are no consequences for it.
Right. So on the other side, of course, this has also been a useful tool for people who otherwise would remain unemployed or unemployable to be able to create a livelihood for themselves. And so, again, we go back to the issue of creating an enabling environment for such people who employ the social media for responsible means, that word again. So again, I'll come to you and say.
I'll speak to what the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is currently doing. I mean, for instance, in the Ministry of Communications, they're doing the 3 MTT programs, which is getting 3 million technical talents from Nigerians, which we can export. And then we're also looking at the talent export program with the Trade Ministry. The Ministry of Youth has also set up the Nigerian Youth Academy, where any Nigerian youth can go on and take a myriad of courses across different, areas, and they can, get those skills, get certified on those skills, and use it to make some living for themselves. You also know at the moment they're also laying fiber optic network cables across the entire country, across all the local government areas. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach. There's no proper approach to do this then. It's a multi-pronged, multi-stakeholder and multi-lateral approach that you need to use to get these things done. And as little as we can do, little steps, they go a long way. I want to tell every young person out there, and I'm using this opportunity to say it again, please and please and please, I mean, you need to look for something sustainable to do online. I started out working when I was 19, and I've been in this space my entire career. And I remember in 2008, when we're about to start putting, for the first time in Nigeria, a Nigerian bank on social media, there was pushback. I remember one of my executives telling me then, only riffraffs were on social media. And they shut down our ideas, because that was when social media platforms were just coming up. Shut down our ideas to put it up. A couple of months later, we were running a campaign, and 3 of us, young boys, just said, no, we believe this is a campaign. And the campaign, I can't forget, was On the Road to 50. Nigeria was turning 50 in 2010. And the 3 of us decided that, no, we think this is something that all Nigerians needed to see, because we're going to run a monthly campaign. And we decided to put it there. In a month, we had 800,000 organic followers and organic followers. In 3 months, we had hit 200,000 organic. No single kobo was spent. And then the bank began to see it as something that could bring in revenues and could help them manage their client base. And before you knew, every other bank jumped on it. We did the same thing with a product called Ndani, which was the first iteration of a current TV platform now, also owned by financial institutions. There are opportunities for young people to use social media responsibly. You can blame the platform all you want, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what you as a person wants to use the platform for. And do not sit and say, oh, these are the excuses. I don't have the opportunities. Oh, the government has not provided this. Every point in time in your life, whether on social media or off social media, opportunities will not come as you expect them to come. Make lemonades out of lemons. And that is what I'll tell people. We should not sit back and say, oh, because the environment is not conducive enough, that stops us from not being using social media responsibly. No, that is not the outlook that we should have as young people. We need to be more responsible. We need to look at countries that have sought to regulate and how the young people, start to use social media for more important things and borrow a leaf from there, and we'll see how we can get our nation, better.
There are other challenges, of course, especially with the young people, and mercifully, that we're told is being addressed because you find young people are so into the social media, and they are the first who are viewed with suspicion by law enforcement, and that's at some point in time, you could just hold up a laptop or a palm top and the term.
I'd like to begin where you actually you mentioned a word that has been buzzing in my head, regurgitation. And for me, this term, regurgitation, speaks volumes about our educational system. Because, like you correctly said, our young people go to school, and what they're expected to do is ingest it, cram it, and regurgitate. No critical thinking, no logic. And so for me, that's actually where it starts. Because at the end of the day, at least in my religion, it's read. That's the key beginning phrase, read. Now, once upon a time, a lot of academics started complaining that we should not allow calculators in the classroom and in the exams. Clearly, that's past now. But we're now facing a very similar narrative or situation where people now say, well, students shouldn't use ChatGPT. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a professor in the US, and he says, well, what he does, or what they do in their university, is that you can go ahead and use it by all means, because you could also just as well use Google search, But the idea is that in the classroom, he's not teaching. What he's doing is that he's supervising the discussion. So you have to bring, even if it's your ChatGPT output, and explain it and discuss it and answer questions from your peers, which means you must understand it. You must own it. And I think this is a lesson for us in Nigeria. It's not just about preparing people for WAEC. I think that's beginning to be a wrong benchmark. I think it's also important that we get our people generally, our youth, to understand that social media sits on something called the cloud. The cloud, ladies and gentlemen, is somebody else's computer. It's just somebody else's server somewhere else. And most likely than not, that server is actually in Chicago or Berlin or...
Not in heaven.
Not in heaven, exactly. So where this brings me to, because you are beginning to touch on issues of cybersecurity, because actually there's a big issue of sovereignty. Many of us look at Starlink and we are, wow, this is convenient, it's high capacity. When my data hits those satellites, where does it go? What happens to a copy? Does my government through its regulator, is it able to regulate those platforms? Take Facebook. Facebook answers to a California regulator, not even to the US federal government regulator. I'm not saying, our local regulator doesn't have any say, but my point is that it brings up the issues of national sovereignty. I would also like to bring up the issue of something called the US Cloud Act. Cloud is an acronym, I'm sorry, I can't remember. But under the US Cloud Act, the US government has arrogated itself the right to collect data from any US-owned platform. Facebook, AOL, WhatsApp, Gmail, Hotmail, you name it. Now, if you're a US citizen under their constitution, you must go through due process. I think around this table, we are not US citizens. So the US constitution doesn't apply to us. And in that same act, they have arrogated themselves the power to share that information.
And we use all those platforms. Anyway,
especially officially.
Yes.
This worries me. So this is one of the things that worries me. Another thing that worries me is an issue which I hope we can come back another day and discuss. AI and faith. Today, there are people who worship a being that you can't see, you can't touch, is all-knowing. There are people that worship a person. There are people that worship cows. There are people that worship statues. When you think about AI, it's all-seeing, it's all-knowing.
Exactly.
You know?
So it's part of the challenge.
Yes, and I'm saying these are what are coming. So, you know, as they say, we ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But just two other things, please. So, you know, we have to begin those kind of societal conversations. The other issue is that we are clearly, and it's not just Nigeria, it's all over the world, especially the West, we're in a post-truth era. The truth apparently is not setting us free. I'm not advocating lying, but I'm just saying these are things we have to think about.
At some point in time, you'd say that that could be subjective.
Of course.
Well, this is true. And then the other thing we are seeing, which, you know, people that I interact with around the world of great concern, is we are now seeing not only AI-generated pornography, we are also seeing AI-generated child sexual abuse. And part of the challenge is that if this thing is actually not real, it just looks real, can you actually prosecute somebody?
Okay.
And I'm just saying that these are all the kind of additional conversations around the social media that we need to start engaging in. So there's a lot to do.
These are legal
so
issues
Mr.
as well.
Mr. Ortega, your assignment is plenty.
I know. That's why I said we need to collaborate. Governments, you know, and key stakeholders like the academia need to collaborate and come up with something.
Well, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, this conversation will continue, and hopefully our phone lines will be open. It means you can join in the conversation. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Council of our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
You drive an automatic car. You don't shift anymore.
Well, thanks for staying with us. As you can see, the conversation went on behind the scenes, and this tells you just how vibrant this thing about the social media is. This segment, of course, would open the phone lines. The numbers to call will be on your screens. We advise you take advantage of them and call in with a question or comment. Our guests will be willing to respond to such issues as you might raise. But we say this every Tuesday. If you're calling in and your call gets through, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also encourage you to go straight to the point and keep it short and simple and not worry too much about the greetings. Just a simple hello. That's okay. That's all you need. So we'll start up this segment with another of our reports. This time we have this report from Asaba.
Social media is a powerful communication medium with widespread influence over cities as well as remote areas. It has had a huge impact on the society, radically transforming the way people interact with others, share images and photos. It has become a cornerstone of daily lives of the people. Social media has been found to have several negative impacts on the economy. The impact of social media on economic growth has been assessed globally, revealing both positive and negative effects, with certain platforms like Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Telegram, among others, being linked to a decrease in economic growth. Moreover, social media marketing has been associated with detrimental effects on businesses, including damage to brand reputation and loss of profit. The time spent on social media can have a significant impact on the economic levels of individuals. Excessive internet use can isolate youth, affect their physical development, and lead to psychological disorders. What are the harms of social media on the economy?
Someone will just place a call to you, or have a WhatsApp group meeting, and you share your details on WhatsApp. Before you know it, they wipe your account. And it's not good for us. Somebody who has labored for his hard-earned money, you'll just be looking at your phone, your money is going.
Social media has really helped, though there are some pockets of negativity in some areas, but it has really helped in the sense that they have made the world a global village, like in Nigeria. Like you cannot say, because you're living in the south, you don't know what's happening in the north. Yeah, everybody knows what is happening almost immediately. It's just that people have gullible ears. They have itching ears to hear what they want to hear.
Whereby our children are now busy engaging in frivolities and things that does not matter, seeing things that they are not supposed to see at their age, using it as an avenue to fabricate all ill vices and immoralities.
Additionally, social media aids the spread of dangerous information, contributing to public crisis, and has the potential to spread terrorism and criminal activities. However, there are also ways to deal with this negative impact, like spending less time on social media, verify information before sharing, among others. In Asaba, I'm Chinyere Okoli.
Next, let's go over to Enugu for this report.
Social media, no doubt, has remained indispensable in the advancement of information and communication. The information environment has completely phased out letter writing, telegram, fax, and other means of communication to the antiquity, as information is made available and knowledge increased just at the click of a button of search engines or handles such as Google, X, and the likes of them. The information dependency on social media has led to the creation of artificial intelligence to provide individuals opportunity to survey any sphere of life without much ado. However, the opportunity has been abused by some people, especially the younger generation, who use social media negatively by way of cyber stalking, misinformation, addiction, pornography, and many more.
It has cut relationships in so many areas. People no longer are interested in meeting one-on-one, physically to interact with each other. There are those who are suffering from what is called alternative world syndrome. They no longer know how to interact with fellow human beings outside.
Nowadays, people create some kind of negative engineering attack mechanisms, such as phishing on the internet, even spoofed accounts, disguise themselves as an existing entity, go on social media, use it as a medium to defraud people.
Security-wise, social media has greatly affected the nation because if you take the case of fake news that fly all over the place, unverified accounts that people, post and repost. It's made possible by the presence of social media, and this heightens the security tempo of the nation.
On the way forward, respondents have advocated discipline, family values, self-censorship to avert the user from causing mayhem that could mar the peace and unity of the country by a mere unverified news item. In Enugu, Ukeria, NTA.
Right. Well, let's go over to Mustafa Ahmed. And Mustafa, the aspect I want you to look at is the one that touches on the security, lives and property, and the nation in general. We see criminals, terrorists, using social media, spreading their stories, and I mean, there are messages of terror around. We're not blaming the platform now. We're saying what can be put in place when someone openly displays and glorifies and gloats over a crime they have committed, especially murder, and they get away with it. And someone says there's nothing that can be done.
That's a brilliant question. I think it is important for us to leave the platforms that allow for these things to be posted out of it. Those platforms they make themselves a willing tool in the hands of terrorists. It's impossible to absolve them of that blame. These platforms have censorship in place for a particular reason. And the way I understand that social media works, or it works with several other platforms, is there are certain content or certain things you cannot put on social media. I give you an example. If I upload a clip of the English Premiership football game right now, in the next 2-3 minutes, my account is flagged. I then sit down and wonder why somebody will be on social media, the same platform that has flagged me for putting up a football content because of copyright or for whatever reason, will flag me for pornography. That same platform, or those same platforms will turn a blind eye when people who are non-terrorists or terrorist organizations take their platform and use it to propagate their message of horror and terror. It baffles me beyond any limit. I'm asking myself the question: how has it happened that the same platform that has censored me for something this minute has allowed something this huge to go unchecked? And this, so again, I don't think it's possible for us to absolve the platforms of the problem. From a personal perspective, what I would advise is, if you come across a content like that, just ignore it, because the more you share it, the more you call attention to it, the more you help these terrorist organizations or terrorists, whatever they might be, or insurgents, help them spread their message. You might think that you are calling attention to this so that people can't know what's going on, but at the end of the day, you are helping them achieve what was their primary objective of spreading fear and terror to the society. So, from a personal perspective, I'll ask for people to be responsible in ignoring these messages or ignoring clips like this. But then again, a large chunk of the work in curtailing this rests on those social media platforms. They are the ones who have the ultimate power to censor whatever goes on their platform. So again, I do not think it is possible to have this conversation without effectively and effectually blaming or putting the bulk at the desk of these social media platforms for them to be up to their game with censorship when it comes to content like this.
Let me come to you on this. There are complaints and worries that the state isn't doing much when it comes to these matters, that you have terrorists who are employing social media to spread their message. We see terrorists displaying their loot, kidnappers, displaying raw cash. Some, they go ahead and film how they torture their victims and kill them sometimes, and they put it on. And a number of citizens are saying they do this. State officials are aware. They have not been able to apprehend them. Yet, when a user employs the use of social media to say something against a person in government, they're swift to fish them out. Why is that so?
So I'd like us to separate.
Okay, just before you go on, I'm sorry, I'll ask, we have a caller on the line. Godwin calling in from Port Harcourt. Yes, right. Godwin, go ahead.
And the youth of nowadays are really getting the information they want without the traditional media. So the social media helps enable the youth to communicate. People now earn money just being on social media. People will not even find it going out to, let's say, going out for a daily job. You can just be at home and earn money just being on social media. So the government should really look into implementing a way the young people that are coming up can end the right way, not going the wrong way to end. Once you start thinking, if you're a thief in real life, you'll be a thief in the social media. I use Telegram, I communicate with my family members, I use WhatsApp, I communicate, I have a group, I communicate with my people. It's very easy to communicate. So I can connect with NTA using social media to watch my NTA. Go to NTA and get the right information. Go other people's platform to go to get the right information. I earn money on Telegram. You know where Telegram has a wallet section where people earn money for free. Just doing their daily task. Just is like going out on a daily walk. You can walk and earn money on social media, which Telegram is also a social media. But people use it for wrongdoings. The government need to, once they see these things out, just the way you can go out when you see a thief, police, I will just go out and arrest him. I will just take the action because I'm like, you understand? You can, if the government puts those implementation, it will be easy for everyone. So people can feel safe. I can walk out on my phone and just earn my money and people will not kidnap me.
Thank you, Godwin. Thank you very much, Godwin. Thank you. Well, that ties into what we're talking about.
Yes. But to answer your question, I think it's very important that we separate, you see, the emotions from the facts.
Okay.
And why do I say so? The emotions are that, oh, you defame someone, which could be either civil or criminal by our laws, and you say, oh, it's not easy for the police to catch you. You're one person. Your IP is easily, recognizable and everything. We also need to understand that a lot of these terrorists, bandits, insurgents, and kidnappers, they've become very sophisticated in their approach to doing these things. Yes, you're seeing the videos online, but they've learned to mask, they've learned to use, different ways to actually hide their footprints. Notwithstanding, in the past 1 year, you've had almost 9,000, terrorists, bandits, kidnappers, and insurgents, either neutralized or arrested, in numbers that we haven't seen in the past few years. And why is that? Because there's more coordination amongst our military and, policing agencies. They are employing more technology. So it's now a technology fight, to actually track and fight, these malaise in our society. So it's not easy. You also need to realize that we do not have sufficient, policemen for our internal security or even armed forces to pursue some of these things at the moment. These guys are already strayed on the traditional fronts. Talk less of you now saying they should now come police social media, that's, there's a veil of anonymity. So imagine if we were to dedicate all our resources into doing that, then the real world is going to even suffer some more. But again, that brings us to this question of terrorism. And I think, I know I need to digress a little bit here, but it's important that people know that a lot of these things are enabled, sometimes by our actions. Someone is kidnapped, reports to the authorities. Yes, you might not, there's a level of distrust, a huge, trust deficit in the country, but still report to the authorities so that they can do their jobs. You have a lot more people being rescued simply by reporting in the past 1 year than was done in the past 3 to 4 years, simply because you have a higher rate of, people reporting and trusting that these agencies will do their jobs. Yes, it might not be 100%. Yes, there will be a lot of, casualties, but at the same time, it's still going to be better than where we're coming from.
Right, back to the phones. We have Alex calling in from ICT. Hello. All right. We missed out. Yeah, now we have Shamsuddin on the line from Abuja. Hello, Shamsuddin.
Yeah, hi, good evening.
Shamsuddin, would you turn down the volume of your TV set for me, please? I can hear the whole back.
Yeah, hi, good evening. I hope you can hear me. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
But again, turn down the volume of your TV set.
Yeah, I've done that already. So I just wanted to ask a question for the people, the panelists.
I think one of the major issues we have with social media in Nigeria is most of these companies, these social media platforms are actually foreign owned, and their jurisdictions are not really restricted, or they don't have any obligations to our laws in Nigeria, and then it becomes very difficult for them to, or for us to like monitor and make sure that we comply with our laws. I think one of the best things to do is to encourage local companies, local social media companies. I'm sure we have few. Why not the government find a way to promote these companies so that we can, it becomes easier for us to like socialize, and then for government to have a say about how it's related in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Yes, back in the studio, and the question of you've raised an issue, and even though it might sound as if it's a projection of the future, I can say it's here already.
Yes, it is. In many ways,
in many ways, because the social media has been used to heat up religious sentiments.
Absolutely.
They've used it to skew messages, the traditional religious messages which we grew up knowing have been skewed to push out a different narrative.
Correct.
And so there's this hopelessness you think about when you say there's nothing you can do about this. The platforms are basically foreign, and because of the nature of technology, it's not easy to put any stops in place. What's the solution?
Well, there are a number of things that you have to think about, but first let me start with another distinction, because I think, first of all, social media tends to be your Facebook, your Instagram, Twitter. Snapchat, yes. But your messaging platforms are not quite the same. Your WhatsApps, your Signals, your Sessions. And why I mention this is because if you go to Facebook, for example, and try and post a video of somebody being tortured, or somebody being killed, or somebody stealing something, Facebook itself has algorithms and mechanisms that would very quickly censor that. But if you post it, for example, on WhatsApp, it's a different, what I'm saying, so we shouldn't mix them up. Now back to what we need to do. I think Shamsuddin had an excellent point. We need to build our own. But as we saw with the case of Brazil recently, I think about a month ago, where they had some difficulty with Twitter. And basically they said, Twitter, if you're not ready to comply with our ways, don't come here.
You had your issues with them as well.
Yes, yes.
Not too long ago.
But you will find that part of it is that, is your market big enough? Now, we may pride ourselves of 220 million people, which is a lot. Out of that 220 million, we just saw, is it 46 million using Facebook? But Facebook has 1.7 billion users. So what is 36 million over 1.7 billion? I mean, you can do the math at home. So sometimes we also have to appreciate that we may not necessarily have the kind of leverage, but we do have to get to a point as a society, again, I don't want to say as a country, but as a society where we say enough is enough. Because if today your general population decides we're not using Facebook anymore, we're moving to Snapchat, Facebook, believe you me, will change. It's about hitting them in the pocket. That's where the key leverage is.
Back to the phones, we have Umar, a regular caller on this program. Umar Anacho, I believe, calling in from Birnin Kebbi. Hello, Umar.
Hello, Cyril. Good evening. My name is Umar Anacho, as usual, calling from Birnin Kebbi. You see, this social media, the way we Nigeria on is differently. restriction, no limitations. Anybody can post anything. It's high time that Nigeria will think of setting social media regulatory commission. I think there is need for that. We don't use social media. We are not responsible in terms of using social media. We can post anytime. We can post anything. The leaders only concerned with what touched them, just like what the former first lady of the wife of our former president, Muhammadu Buhari, with the student from Yobe or Damaturu, I don't know. So they are only concerned with their own prestige. They do not concern with the value and the social implications of those things. If there is regulatory commission, I believe it can guide the citizens toward the use of social media. May God continue to bless our country. Let's stop here.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I think in 2022, NITSDA came up with a code of practice, that defines, a couple of things. Yes, there are some parts that people argue infringes on, certain rights as granted by the Constitution, but I think that has been addressed in the NBC Act that is about to be repealed. But it covers everything from, appropriate use of social media platforms and even how the social media platforms themselves and digital platforms, I think I should use digital platforms instead, are meant to, police the kind of content that is used on their site and what their sites are used for. That is already in place, and that guides to an extent how this platform should operate. It came into effect in 2022, September or so.
All right. Well, Dr. Mbanaso, you have helped on R&D all through. And again, I think one of the callers just said, look, the only way we should, as they say in local parlance, do our own. Can we do our own?
Absolutely. We can. All the platforms are software-based, and we have a lot of talented software engineers. But like I said, the government has to take responsibility of establishing centers of excellence. It is not the private sector. So he said, my very good friend said, that the government creates enabling platform, enabling environment, and setting up the centers of excellence in different areas of fields of cybersecurity will be the responsibility of the government. Then the private sector can be responsible in sponsoring or giving grants for research and development. So in that way, we can be able to begin to prioritize national priorities in such, okay, we are talking about, for instance, even if we cannot be able to do Facebook, look at messaging platforms like WhatsApp. We should be able to. If you go to America, for example, the WhatsApp that is used by the government is not the same the WhatsApp we are using. So we can start simply by simple things, but that has to be done deliberately. It is not something you leave because the WhatsApp, nobody pays for it, unquote. So it's not something a private entrepreneur will sponsor to say, okay, let's go and do WhatsApp. So key is research, innovation, and development, and it must be deliberate.
We have Ugo Chukwu calling in from Owerri. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I've been listening very closely to the topic this night. And while we talk about all of the negativity that comes with social media, we can also take our time to talk about some of the positives from social media. In the most recent thing that happened, I think this is something that affected every one of us as Nigerians. It was the treatment of the national team in Libya. Now, when you follow that story closely, they did not grant them access to the internet after they diverted their plane. They were only able to get access to the internet when they had to, lie to one of the Libyan authorities that one of the media person lied that the needed that the wife was pregnant. Then they had to allow him call. You understand? They had to allow him connect to the internet, and immediately he connected to the internet, they were able to let Nigerians know that they are in danger. And that was how the whole Nigeria knew that the Super Eagles national team were in danger over there in Libya. Now, this is the importance of social media, the positive part of social media. It has its negativities as well. Do you understand? Yes, you can't take that away from it. But the positive part of social media has also its own, how do I put it now? It has its own place when it comes to its own social media space. Do you get my point? So you can understand very well that as much as we want to talk about all the negativities around social media and all of that, we should also not forget that social media has opened the eyes of a lot of people around the world to so many information that they would not have gotten if not for the fact that they had access to the internet. Do you understand? So this is what I think I just want to add. But I'm not disputing the fact that it has negativities as well, because the youth, you understand, in fact, at that adolescent stage, people need to be guided on how to use social media. Because no matter what happens, people will still have, at the tip of their fingers, they have access to a lot of things online. The social media has good parts, it has bad parts. But when you culture a child very well, they would know the kind of things they would use on social media. I use social media. I'm on Twitter. I'm on X. I'm on Facebook. I'm on all of those platforms. But I know how I use it because I'm a sports journalist on my own. So when you think you use the social media to your own advantage, and there are ways people use it to disadvantage, they just need to be guided, and that's all. You understand? So that's just my statement. I'm enjoying the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Gochuku. Let's go over to Mustafa Ahmed. And another of the positives, it's been a useful tool in promoting the respect for human rights, holding government officials to account, and drawing attention of the state to critical areas. And that's one of the positives. And so far, there have been quick responses by agencies when complaints are made. The traditional waiting forever before you get a response, that has all changed, and it's all thanks to the social media, isn't it?
You're absolutely correct. What we've seen is social media revolutionizing the way the governed interact with the government, or the government interact with the people that they govern. And like rightly pointed out, they've been the waiting time for government reaction to issues has greatly, and I mean greatly, shrunk. You find agencies of government, departments, ministries reacting in record time to issues raised, and beyond government, because let's not narrow it down to government. Corporate organizations like banks or several other institutions, it has aided even customer care and the feedback mechanism of regular everyday startups, across the world. You buy a product and that product isn't what you expect it to be. You go on social media and make a complaint, and you find that company come and apologize to you, recall that product, and then issue you something. And this would have taken you maybe weeks, months to get done before now. These are the positive aspects of it, and this is why it will always break my heart to find young Nigerians or young people across the world, because it's not just a Nigerian problem, who should be using social media to engineer social change, and guarantee themselves a better share, using it for the most mundane or the most primordial of issues. You find Nigerians debating which ethnic group has the best soups on social media. That's not the kind of conversation we want to have on social media. You want to be able to hold your House of Rep member, your assembly member, your governor, the president, whoever it is that your authority, or just even a business that you patronize, hold them accountable or hold them responsible, and begin to use this to drive the way businesses and government operate with their customers or with the government, however the case may be. And the possibilities are endless if we channel our energies in the right way.
Right. Barnabas from Ebonyi is on the line. Hello, Barnabas.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Barnabas Rukocha from Ebonyi State. I slightly disagree with the fact that those people cannot be traced. If I, Barnabas Rukocha, insult somebody, a powerful man in Nigeria today, I will be apprehended in less than 20 minutes. It's true that those bandits, they do that video, but they don't release it at the scene. They release it later. But how come that a phone stolen here was traced down to Port Harcourt and retrieved back? So the social media operators, I can say they are particularly about the phone they are receiving from the public, are not interested in controlling the crime that they use their network to commit. If the telecommunication, being WhatsApp, being a Twitter or whatever, want to regulate it, I am sure they will regulate it. I am sure they will do that. Yes, they might say that millions of people are using social media, but millions of people are paying tariff, and they'll cut when you don't have when you do not recharge. Good evening.
All right. Thank you very much, Barnabas. I'm sure my guest there will respond to the issues you've raised here. Right. Yes, let's start off with the SSA, the president, on digital new media.
Yes, I would like to clarify what I said, which Barnabas made reference to. I said our law enforcement agencies are overstretched. They're stretched thin. They're fighting, internal security issues on 3 fronts in the north. They're fighting in the Niger Delta, and they're pursuing other things. And they still have the regular, everyday job of maintaining, peace within the country. So I'm saying, if we need to push all those resources into that, I mean, there are other ways we can. There's a counterterrorism unit that's been set up, joint counterterrorism units. There's a joint national communication center that's been set up, amongst the security agencies and other things that I can't even say here, which is aiding in the prompt, special force operations that have been going on, for the past few months. So we're seeing the tide changing. We're seeing improvements in the war against insecurity and everything, but also we want people to also work with the government. You have communities that also shield some of these people. There are a lot of communities that know these people but also are afraid of reprisal attacks, and that is why they fail to come out to call them out. So it's a very delicate situation. I think we need to give support to all men and women of the armed forces who are daily fighting to ensure that things get, better and protect the freedoms that we enjoy, because it's also very difficult for them. But I'm sure, with collaboration, with everyone's support, Nigeria will be better off for it.
All right. Let me go to Abdulhakeem Ajijola, and I want to return to the note of warning you sounded earlier on. And what would you say to the millions of those who use these platforms? You talked about the cloud, the security. Where are all these things we are posting going to? And so I mean, if you talking to millions who just believe that you just post that it goes nowhere, and I mean, there are quite a number of people who just don't think about that. So it brings us back to the issue of responsible use.
Well, first of all, I would tell the people in the audience, you have to remember that you live in an era of never forgetting. You may post something, once you have pressed enter and it goes, it's no longer under your control. Like we said, it's on somebody else's computer. Will they delete it? I doubt it. Even if you think it's deleted, it's actually the pointer to where it is that's deleted, not the actual content. And so what is also happening is that the cost of storage is dropping precipitously. Indeed, there is technology now where it is believed that they will be able to store the sum total of humanity's knowledge from when knowledge started to date on something the size of a sugar cube. And this has its own implications. But the key thing I want young people to remember is that we're in that age of never forgetting. So if you decide as a young lady, for example, you are in love with X and you post everything about X, and maybe you and X eventually do not get together, and you get together with Y. Just a moment, sir. Tomorrow when you're a grandmother, one of your grandchildren will tell you, Grandma, who was X? So, that's one thing young people. The second thing I'd want young people or the audience generally to remember, and this goes back to something Chinyere said from Asaba, your correspondent there. She spoke about time. Let's be frank. There are many things Dangote or Bill Gates or Warren Buffett can buy. They can't buy time. And so if you spend your time on social media, I'm not saying you shouldn't relax, you should. It's part of what the human physiology requires. But if you do not spend enough time developing yourself, as they say, YouTube is a free online university. If you do not use it to promote your businesses or create your opportunities, that time is never coming back. It's gone. None of us can go back. So those are the two things I would want to put across.
I raised this because there are quite a number of people who would say, well, in a world of, what's the population of the world? I'm just anonymous and no one knows who I am from some remote part of Nigeria, and I can do what I like and post what in other words, not many believe that there are footprints you're leaving behind when you send so much stuff around. Yeah. And so the tendency is you just think that I'm unknown, who knows me?
Well, that means the
internet never forgets.
They don't think they're important.
Never forgets.
No, every single person is important. Every single person.
I've seen people lose job opportunities.
What we should be emphasizing is this responsible use. Mm-hmm. That is the key word.
And where do you start?
Well, where you start is, I would say, I just put a note I want to be able to emphasize. You see, when we are drawing legislation, frameworks, blah, 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 we always, tend on how to punish. So I'm advocating that we should draw frameworks or legal instruments for the support for responsible and protective use of social media. So in that, you have a framework that can guide teaching you young people how to use these things responsible. And it must start from the primary school. Because if you get to primary school, a lot of primary schools people use smartphones. They use, most of them, secondary school, they use smartphones. So you must start from primary school, start orienting people why they should use social media responsibly. For instance, when I was doing my PhD was when Facebook, the guys were creating Facebook. I was one of the people in my security group that reviewed Facebook. And that is why I'm not in Facebook up to today, because I knew the security implication. For instance, in Buckingham Palace, none of the workers belong to social media, Facebook. So, and this is where regulation comes in. When you are talking of regulation is important, but regulation is just a deterrent. Regulation cannot solve technical issues. And this is where ownership comes in, that we need to be able to begin to see how do we own some of this technology in such a way that we can be able to technically regulate in such a way that, probably putting filters and all that to be able to filter content, before they become harmful or used weaponized. So, like he said, National Orientation Agency is doing very well. But my point of view is that they should not rely on televisions, adverts. They should go to grassroots. Start this reorientation we're talking about, restoring our values. Starting from primary school. Creating ambassadors who can be able to take this message to grassroots and begin to redirect our children to look at how to use social media responsibly, how to use social media to create wealth, as opposed to using social media for glamour and, posting themselves, and, that's all what, most majority of our people use social media for.
Okay, so since we're on the subject now, Mustafa Ahmed, at what point, where do we start? This reorientation that we all have agreed, move away from posting materials that are, let's face it, pornography, posting hate speech, to using the social media to generate income. And just like Dr. Manasseh has just said, where do you start from? At what level do you begin this moral rebirth?
I think we're already behind, so we need to start as soon as possible. And when you ask what level do we start from, we start from everything starts from within the family. So you look at a child who is 2 or 3, they already have a tablet in their hand, they already have a phone screen in front of them. And so we must begin from that age. It starts by controlling the amount of screen time that you give your children. I see a lot of parents right now who use social media or mobile phones or screens as a distraction. So rather than spend time with their children, bonding with the children and teaching them the ethics and ethics of society, what they do is they put them in front of a screen, and then it creates some kind of barrier between parents and children. A child who is 2, 3 years old spends more time watching YouTube videos than actually spending time interacting with their parents. And some go as far as abandoning their children with tablets and mobile phones, and withdrawing those tablets and becoming a problem. So we need to start from as early as possible, because I somehow often say that my generation is one that is on the precipice of being lost. The fight to reorientate my generation is almost lost. So I would rather focus a lot of the attention on the generation after mine. They're still very moldable, and that's where we must begin from. I'm not saying that the NTA shouldn't do what it can for people my age, but then it's very difficult to teach.
What about ancients like us?
Yeah, I want to quickly speak to something that Doctor said about owning our own. I think that this also speaks of our orientation. Nigerians have a knack for imported materials. It stems to our clothing, our food, our vehicles, even our technology, and this is why it is. There are Nigerian-owned social media platforms, but you don't find Nigerians patronizing or being active on those social media platforms. We believe, and again, it speaks to our orientation that if it's only best if it is not Nigerian. So we must look at this as another area that we must address and begin to teach our people how to be nationalistic in their worldview. It's a global village, but again, China has its own version of Facebook. They've got their own version of Google. So why can't Nigeria do the same? We are a population of 220 million. Everyone, for every 4 black persons you meet, one of them is a Nigerian. So we've got the numbers to do this. 45 million Nigerians are on social media, 46 million according to the report. we have a population of 250 million, so 220 million. We have the population enough to engineer this. And Nigeria leads the charge for the rest of Africa. If we do this, it becomes a phenomenon among the entirety of the black continent. So I think Nigeria needs to take the lead, not just for the sake of Nigeria, but for the sake of the entire black race.
All right. We'd like to thank you so very much, Mustafa Ahmed, communications and strategy expert. Thank you so much for availing us of your thoughts on NTA Tuesday Live. We look forward to speaking with you again sometime in the future. Thank you very much.
My absolute pleasure to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, back here, we just have just a few more minutes to go. Okay. And so from your closing comments, I'd like you to also take one or two things off. By the way, he was talking about his generation being the ones who are on the cusp of being lost. And I wanted him to respond to what should happen to ancients like us.
I mean, for the ancients, you've seen it. You've been there at a time when there was still some sort of nationalistic, values or whatsoever in us. You can lead the charge in bringing it back. We still listen to our elders. And you can start that, at the moment. But I think, so that we don't digress from the topic itself, prohibition in itself might not lead to the intended results. In fact, it's been proven world over that prohibition actually leads to, the opposite of the results that they intended for. But like everyone has argued, properly, and I think we need to all agree that at some point, there has to be some form of regulation. How the regulation will work, would it have to be a mixed mash of different standalone regulations that currently exist? For instance, our laws on, defamation and everything, and the social media or digital platforms bills as they are now guides, the use of those platforms and whatever, what was the word? Whatever penalties or whatsoever are left to the main laws that guides those things. For instance, if it's defamation, it doesn't have to be in that bill. Okay. You can refer to whatsoever bill. But we need something to guide us. And I'm happy that, the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation or Commission is actually looking to reenact their laws. And in it, there are a lot of positives that we can take. Okay. I beg our Nigerian youth, don't see this as an opportunity to let foreign interests, to let fifth columnists tell you that this is a social media bill. It is not a social media bill. It is a bill to protect the future of our country.
All right. So let's come to Abdul Hakim Ajijola, Chairman African Union Cybersecurity Expert Group. Your closing comments?
First of all, I think I would agree with my colleague earlier who talked about we have to think African. Nigeria is not enough. We do have, when we're developing things. That said, the future doesn't wait, and neither should our efforts to protect it. Directly to those who develop policy, strategies, and implementation frameworks, I have a couple of requests, and maybe I can speak directly to you if you're listening. First of all, you need, as you develop these policies, strategies, and implementation frameworks, to factor three groups of people: the underserved, the unserved, and the unborn. They are not here today to make input in those policies, strategies, and implementation frameworks, but they have to bear the brunt of the precedents you set and basically the examples that you set. So we need to factor them. And then finally, as we are developing these policies, strategies, and frameworks, they must have a better foundation. I think there's something attributed to Jesus about building your house on the rock as opposed to the sand. And there's a good lesson for all of us. And this is, in other countries, these policy strategies and implementation frameworks are rooted in their philosophies, are rooted in their principles, are rooted in their ethics. And this begs the question, what is the Nigerian African philosophy, principle, ethics, and accountability frameworks?
Right. Good question. And Dr. Mbada, so finally, just a minute.
Thank you very much. I think Ajola has actually said something that is very, very vital, Thinking Africa, and that has been my advocacy for a very long time. And secondly, the need for research, innovation, and development. And you see, research belongs to the academia. And for you to be able to do it in such a way that is very, very productive, you need to establish centers that are responsible, that you can hold accountable. Now, if you go to how much are we investing in AI, for instance, you say you are investing money in AI, but most of them don't go to the academia for research. So we need to be able to prioritize our national priorities. It's very, very key and important. Thank you.
And it's on that note we must leave this conversation. So I always say, one program can take care of all the issues. We thank you for watching. We thank all our guests who have been here with us. Tega Ogra, Senior Special Assistant to the President, Digital New Media. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me on the show.
And it's good to see you again.
We're still here.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
It's a long time since we had a session like this with you. But thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Dr. Mbanaso, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
And thank you too for being part of this program. For those who called in, next week we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.
NTA International is with you. In your living room, office, and everywhere, anywhere. We provide a company you desire in terms of balanced and up-to-date news, programs, and the best of entertainment. Tune in to DSTV channel 251, Go TV channel. And to watch NTA International in the USA, Canada, and Mexico, use the following satellite parameters. You can also see us on Facebook and YouTube for quality content on the go. NTA International, Africa's window to the world.